Right, we'll start. Ena mana, ena reo, ena iwi, e ro rangatira ma, no mai hare mai, piki mai, whakatau mai. Me onoi tato, karakia timatanga. Nā mihi o te rā, ke te whānau, e hui hui nei, kia tau te rangimaria, kia whakatapua tato, nei nā mei, e whakapono ana tato, humi e, hui e, takie. Ko saka toko inua, hei whakahare ko papa aho, ke hui e community Aotearoa, and I'll now hand it over to my colleague and lead of the webinar today, Ronya, to introduce you to the kopapa of the webinar and to our speakers.
Tēnā koe hua. Tēnā koutou katoa, kua hui mai nei ki tēnei hui huinga. So welcome everyone to the start of our spring webinar series here no Papatanga o te Koanga. So it's really sunny here in Wellington. I hope it's sunny where you are as well, just to the start of spring. Our kaupapa o te rā is finance and payroll tools for community groups. No tia mana hau, engari kei te whanganuia tāra tōku kaina. I tai mai au ki tēnei whenua, te kaumari matau ki muri, ki nui tōku aroha ki Aotearoa, e mihi ana ki te tangata whenua I konei. Ko Ronya Ivers, tōku ingoa, he Kaiwhakahaere kaupapa ahau ki hui community Aotearoa. So I hail all the way from Germany and now live in the beautiful Wellington. I arrived here 15 years ago and deeply acknowledge the people of this land. My name is Ronya Ivers and I'm one of the project managers at Hui Community Aotearoa. So for those of you who don't know us, we are a peak body to champion and tautoko the mahi of our tangata whenua, community and voluntary groups in Aotearoa. And it's my pleasure to be guiding our kōrero today. So te mea tuatahi, first up, just a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. You will have seen that we're recording this hui, and so that's just so that we can share it later with more whānau and friends. If you could remain on mute while others speak, that'd be really great. And I encourage you to use the chat function to make comments, post links, and to post any partai for our speakers. I also invite you to post your name, your community group, or where you work and where you're tuning in from in the chat now. So running a community group often on a shoestring is hard work, as many of you know, and that's even so when things are running smoothly or efficiently. But that's why we wanted to provide you with a special series that is centered on finding the best technology tools for you and your team. So now we'll be talking about a range of tools for different purposes over the next few weeks, but I want you to remember that technology can be an enabler, but it also has its limitations. And really hope that you go away with a better understanding of what's available and how to use technology to help you run your organization and build your own community. We're really pleased that we can partner with the NZ Navigator Trust, who are a small committed charity that equip community groups with online tools. And welcome Marion and Barbara to our kōrero today, and you'll hear from them later about their digital stuff we love platform. Inaine, I'd like to introduce you to our kai kōrero, our speakers. We invited them to talk about one specific tool that sparks their fire and how it makes their lives easier. So Nikki Hurst is Kaiwhakahaere of the New Zealand Council of Christian Social Services. Nikki will share her experience using Xero and how it helps her with her organization's mahi and finances. And we also have Rochelle Stewart-Allen, who is the Kaiwhakahaere Matua at Hui Community Aotearoa. A lot of you will know her already, and she will talk about the one tech tool that sparks her fire. She talks a lot about it in our team meetings, and it's NZCCSS Payroll. So no mai haere mai kia kōrua. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Nikki to talk about Xero.
Wonderful to see everyone. It is absolutely a beautiful day here in Wellington, and it's a really exciting thing to be with you all. Before I get into Xero, I'll just quickly introduce myself a little more fully. Ko te ahu mairangi, te manga runei taku, ko manakura te awa, e mahia nei aku māharahara, no orangi kaupapa o hau, e mihi ana ki ngā tohu o mihi o te whanganui atara o e noho nei au. I shouldn't try and rush things. My name's Nikki. I'm originally from the bottom of South Auckland on the south side of the Manukau Harbour, a small place called Clark's Beach. But I live now on the side of Te Ahu Mairangi Monga in Wilton in Wellington, and I'm incredibly grateful to be here and be part of our wonderful country and our wonderful communities. I'm the Executive Officer of the New Zealand Council of Christian Social Services, and we exist to support a kaupapa towards a just and compassionate society. But in a past life, I was a geeky accountant. I tend to say that I'm a recovering accountant, but I'm grateful for the skills and knowledge that I have from those 10 years back in my 20s. And I was really privileged to be one of the people who was practicing as Xero emerged. And I worked for a really large firm up in Auckland, and we were one of the original Xero partners. So I have quite a special place in my heart for Xero as a product, both because it's actually a really useful product, but also because of their commitment the whole time that they've existed to seek feedback in a really active, partnering way. They have always wanted to make whatever they produce both useful and usable, but most importantly, and we were commissioned to support this, idiot-proof. I was one of the original people that got to try really hard to break it, and I'm really good at breaking tech tools, and happily that led to lots of solutions before they were needed. So I can keep rattling on, Ronya, unless we had some specific questions. Nope, I'll just keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. So here at NZCCSS, we use Xero for all of our accounting purposes, but most specifically, we use it to track those wonderful people who are generous enough to give us money, and to provide them with invoicing. And we find that module particularly useful and helpful in that it's fully automated. Once it's set up, which is really straightforward to anyone who's used to filling out a form, we can just bang things out with regularity. But another key thing that we find really helpful, it doesn't automatically then on-send and chase people unless we tell it to. And we all know that sometimes with our funding partners, there'll be lots of reasons, and we don't want that embarrassing moment where every 7 days or every month on the 20th, they're getting an invoice saying, hey, why haven't you paid that? When we've had a call from them before. So one of the key things that I particularly like about Xero is it's super flexible, and it's very easy to, within Xero, be able to make it do what you need it to do, rather than just the setting that applies to everyone that we often find in other products. The other ways that we use Xero here at NZCCSS is to provide reports through to our board. And because Xero is such a widely used product, it supports people to have a broad understanding of what reporting is possible, what reports look like, and has taken into account a lot of the feedback over the years from people with different needs in relation to visualising reports, but mostly into financial records being really transparent. So not only can I use their basic set that they have available, there's a set of management reports that would have all the normal things that most people are used to looking at. I can also drop them down into Excel or into PDF. And once in Excel, I can fiddle with it to my heart's desire. I can cut and paste, I can hide columns, I can highlight rows, I can do anything my geeky little accountant brain would like me to do. Obviously, the minute you do that, you lose a wee bit of the integrity. So I can then go back and print out my start point directly from Xero to prove that while I've changed things around, it's still the same answer at the bottom. And we find it particularly helpful here because NZCCSS for the last few years has had the absolute privilege of hosting an organisation within our organisation. Xero's let us be able to show it simply as a line in our accounts, which is all we need to see, but also within the Xero system to have a mini broken down separate accounting of their income and expenses, so that for the people leading that organisation within our organisation, we can produce information specific to them that's useful to them. So it makes it really easy to set up and create divisions. It also makes it really easy to track projects. And you don't need some sort of specialised thinking or degree or experience to be able to do that. I won't get too far into the detail of it other than to say the way that Xero's set up with its particular chart of accounts, it's very easy to add accounts or to set things up within things, which again, with some of the other products on the market that are a lot more rigid, that's not always entirely possible. And probably the other thing that I thought it might be helpful to share is we've recently shifted who we complete our audit to. And because of Xero, that was a really simple process. So all we had to do was provide Xero with the information of who the new people were. We didn't have to go in and collect a whole heap of paperwork. We didn't have to go through all these crazy steps to get people set up within our system. It was just as simple as we took back ownership and control from the previous auditors, and I added the new auditor as a user. It took me less than 30 seconds. And then our auditor had access to all of our information that they needed to complete the audit. And happily, something that I didn't know that I learned through our audit this year, there's now a whole internal space within Xero where you can upload documents and share them specifically with users. So rather than doing the normal audit, a million emails back and forward, all I had to do was generate them in Xero and upload them to that space. It was so wonderful for my sad, geeky little heart. And I always love learning new things. So that was fantastic. And it's just sort of those little sensible things within Xero that I think does make my life easier. It certainly makes it easier for our finance person who otherwise might have a very overbearing EO who thinks she knows a fair bit about accounting breathing down her neck. It saves a massive amount of time because we're both speaking the same language, the information's already there, there's no processing bank statements, it's just completely automated end to end. And other than trying to make me get my invoices and receipts to her far quicker than I'm probably used to, it's really easy for both to use. Trying to think, the other thing that I asked her was around what she really loved about it. One of the other things she mentioned was, as a program, it's very easy to navigate. You just click through everything. So, for instance, if you are looking at this month's profit and loss or the profit and loss for the year, and there's something that you want to know about a particular amount or account, you just click into it and keep clicking till you get as far down the chain as you need to go. So, for instance, I was preparing our accounts for the board next week. Bo does all the hard work and I just get to write the nice little waffle on the side. And there were a few amounts that I wasn't sure what they were. So clicked on that amount and went, oh, that's right. We had that awesome team training. Have we invoiced that? And what was that person's name? And I can keep clicking the whole way through to see it on the bank statement, to see the invoice that was paid, to get that person's details. It's just bomb-proof, or at least it's Nikki-proof, which is probably more important. Oh, so I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions. I am keen to hear whether other people are using it and whether they find it useful, I guess.
Kia ora, Nikki. We have got a question from Mary. She said she's using Xero at the moment for tracking how different grants have been spent, use the tracking categories, but is wondering if there's a better process for this, as she finds it very time consuming and fiddly.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mary. I know the particular structure you're talking about. We use that for another board that I sit on. There is other and better ways to do it. I would probably have a chat to your accountant or your auditor and talk to them maybe about whether, well, first of all, whether or not they need you to be providing that level of information, because that's often the thing. I think previously, under the way that we used to receive grants and funds, we had a far more onerous requirement to report back. And I know that that's changed a lot in the last 5 years. But I would absolutely have a chat to your accountant about how they structure internally, how things work for them. Because without getting too much into the technicality, it would be really easy to change those codes and then to build reports that just report on those codes and be able to pick them out rather than having to go through that extra step of divisionalising it. And I think that's one of the good things with Xero, because it's so widely used. There are so many different people you can ask for help, and there's so many different ways to use it. And if it's not working for you, then go back to somebody else who knows and see if they have a better solution. Yeah.
Kia ora. Thanks, Mary, for your part. Are there any other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I have got one as well. Rochelle?
Absolutely. That's a great way to do it, Rochelle. Yeah, a separate item code in the chart of accounts to track specific projects.
Kia ora. Thanks, Rochelle, for that comment. I guess my question would be, Nikki, I mean, accounting is something that eventually every organisation will have to do at some point when they receive grants or when they receive grants or anything to do with invoicing and so on and so on. But also I'm really interested in knowing what you think some of the limitations are for Xero as well, because, and the reason I'm asking that is, and I mentioned before, is that technology is great when you know what you can use it for, but it's only as good as you use it well, and there are limitations to all technology as well. So have you got some limitations? Do you know some solutions around it?
Yeah, look, I would say the limitations, like anything, while it's quite customizable, it's customizable to a point. So there's things that I would love it to do that I'm not able to do, as far as I can generate the management reports within it, but I can't, as a user who now holds their own license rather than through an accounting firm, I can't go through and add in all of our information for our annual report. So I can't make the report have our charities number, and I can't put narratives and boxes into that. So I wind up having to drop things out of Xero into Excel or a similar product, and then having to manually manipulate that, and it's something that I'll have to do every year. So it would have been great to be able to have some sort of financial report generator. Obviously they don't do that because, you know, I'm sure their biggest client base is not people like me, and their client base would quite like us to keep paying them to complete their financial accounts. Another limitation, of course, and another risk is the ability to drop things out of Xero and manipulate it. So as I said earlier, the minute you export something into another product, that means it's editable, particularly with financial information. That should always give everyone a moment's pause, and you really need to build into your process some sort of certainty that if you're seeing a report in Excel, that the person who provides that is able to show you an equivalent version from within the system, so that you know that both things are tika. And I guess the biggest limitation probably for our sector would be do you need it? You know, it is another cost. It's not a large cost, and they are generally quite good as far as having discounts for not-for-profits and NGOs. But it probably can feel to people who might only have half a dozen transactions a month like a bit of a sledgehammer to kill a fly. So horses for courses, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikki. That's great. One other question from Marion is, do you have any tips to introduce reluctant trustees to understand the high-level view of Xero?
Yep. I sit on a board for a youth-led anti-bullying trust down South Island, and we spend a lot of time with all of our board members trying to get to a point of shared financial literacy. So it's external to Xero, but I tend to talk a lot about the chocolate fish approach to accounting, and how each part of your profit and loss can relate to the production of a chocolate fish. So obviously your sales area is the whole end product. Your cost of goods sold are the ingredients. Your expenses are the wrapping, packaging, transport, freight, logistics, whatever. And your net profit is the money you've got to make your next batch of chocolate fish. And I have a very geeky infographic should anyone ever want it. But I think it's worth the time being spent with one another to get to a point where you actually are confident that everyone knows what they know and that everyone can understand what's being presented to them, particularly with the coming changes to legislation that place more of the onus on board members than we've previously held, or certainly that increase our risk of being board members. And the nice thing about Xero is, you know, you can bring it into this sort of meeting, you can go through everyone, all the information's there, and you can then, when people ask questions, you can quickly show them, like I said, the clip right through, and it just, I think it leads to a sense of confidence in what's being shared, and once you're confident that that information's correct, then you can start interrogating the information in a more useful, nuanced way.
Thank you. So Alison said that she's working, she's using Xero as well and finds that really useful and makes the audit stress-free for her.
Yes, stress-free audit's the goal.
And then Mike had a question. He uses Xero but finds it limiting because it allows you to run budgets for projects, but only at the account code level. Do you know of a get around of this issue?
I don't, if I'm honest. I have seen people produce some wonderful budgets out of Xero, but I have a feeling and a sense that they've done that by dropping it into Excel, doing it there, and moving forward from there. So using it in a really similar way to you, Mike. That's how we do it here, and it's not perfect. There used to be a far better report, and I'm not sure why they got rid of it. Yeah.
Great. Any other last questions for Nikki? Ka pai. He mihi nui ki a koe e hoa. Thank you so much, Nikki, for your kōrero and for your time sharing your experience with Xero. So I hope that's been useful and relevant to those on the call and those who'll be watching the recording later on. And on that, I'd like to invite Rochelle to share about how she uses NZCCSS Payroll at Hui. Kia ora, Rochelle.
Kia ora, Ronya. I'll just talk a little bit and then I do have some slides, but they're simple and you can access them from our website afterwards. So tēnā koutou katoa, ko ingarangi airanga e ko te rana te whakapapa ranga mai, engari ko te whanganui atara, tamaki kaura e whiti, te whenua tupu, ko pitu oni te kāinga. So kia ora everyone, I'm Rochelle from Hui. I'm based in Petone in Lower Hutt, and I'm the Kaiwhakahaere I can't even say that today, Kaiwhakahaere Matua, the Chief Executive of Huie. So I'm going to talk about Thank You Payroll. So mystically, the slides are going to come up. So I've been at Huie for nearly 3 years, and we changed to Thank You Payroll. Once I learned a little bit more about it, we used to have another automated payroll system. Can you just go on full slide, Taka? Thank you. So I really encourage you, whether you're using Thank You Payroll or another automated system that you're starting to do this, it's so much quicker. So I've just done a few screenshots and talk a little bit about how it works, just so you kind of get to see a little bit about the back end. So we can go to the next slide. This is just the dashboard when you sign in. So how it works is that it's free for charities. It's cloud-based, so that means that I can do my payroll from anywhere, which is really helpful if I'm traveling or suddenly I'm on leave and I forget to do it. You can also set up an automated payroll to go through every payroll period. It automatically files the PAYE and the KiwiSaver to IRD, so you connect it to IRD, and then it saves that, so you don't get a kind of bill later on that you're a little bit unsure about, or if you've got to keep money aside. I find that that's particularly really helpful. So it integrates with Xero, and kia ora, Nikki, for your explanation about Xero. I'm also a fan of Xero. We use it here at Huie. I find it really useful. I particularly like the reporting function. And what I do is you can download the reports in Xero as Excel, but you can also download them as PDFs. So that gives a kind of level of accessibility, which I really like. But back to Thank You Payroll. It's also a New Zealand-based social enterprise, which I really like. Great to support a New Zealand business that is essentially building something with a commercial arm, but also giving back in return for charities. So if we just go to the next slide, you can see a little bit about how it works. So this is really how you do a payroll. So this is for one individual in the payroll. So you just enroll everybody and you add their details in. It also records, you can see where it says standard pay on the left. That's a drop down box. So you would put annual leave, public holiday, whatever you might put in there. And then you just the number of days, you can set it up. I've set this up in the back end to show the X number of days and hours, but you can also set up the number of days as well instead. And for example, if in a week you had an annual leave day, so you just set up another line under that relevant week, and then you made say Monday was a public holiday, you just put the one under public holiday or annual leave, and it's really simple. And then you update and save it, and at the bottom of the page then it shows you how that all works. So it will do the calculation, it'll show you the KiwiSaver, it'll show you any PAYE, etc., and then you can just double check the previous payroll that you did about whether that's accurate and correct. So you go through and do this for each individual person in your organisation. And then if we go to the next page, and then essentially you at the bottom you'll see it says employees, so usually it has your employee names there. You can see it says on, so that shows that this pay period they're getting paid, and it'll show you the gross amount there. It automatically emails out pay slips to everybody, and also will email you or your administrator or accountant, whoever's doing it, the summary. And you can see up the top when the payday ends, what day is the pay, when the pay period starts. Then you can also do processing 2 days, the 1 day and overnight. You can also see quick load as a default pay, or just copy the last one that you did. And then there's a calendar to make sure that it's not too confusing. It shows exactly how much you deposit and then what will pay out. So that's taking off the PAYE or KiwiSaver. And you can just check these figures at the bottom of, can you go back? You can check these figures at the bottom of the page. It'll show you the previous amounts that you paid for previous pays. So essentially what you're doing is you are processing the pay and thank you payroll, and then you will, you can see at the top that green button says confirm and debit. So once you're ready and happy with it, you can also click around and go back and forward and edit anything if you need. Then you click confirm and debit, and it will send automatically your payroll to your bank. So it's also connected to your bank. And then it will also automatically send that information to in-name revenue. And then how it works in practice is the money that you deposit, so you can see it says Wednesday 19th here, the money that you deposit goes to Thank You Payroll, and then they organise that payment. You can see why it's Friday 21st, so then it goes out overnight or 2 days before, and then on the Friday the 21st it will then go into your employees' bank accounts. So it's really simple. Now you can go to what I like about it. Literally, it takes me 5 minutes to do the payroll at Huie. Admittedly, we're very small, so and it's not very complicated. The only thing really I'm shifting around a little bit is about leave or public holidays. I love that it's cloud-based. I find that really helpful, just because I do a reasonable amount of travel for my job, and sometimes it's just great to be able to just do, if I'm in a hotel room somewhere, I can just do that, or we work from home, so I can also just do it. You just essentially sign into Thank You Payroll in the cloud on the website, and you can set up your payroll from there. And it also has really helpful tips and tricks. I think some of these are repeated in my editing of my emails, of my slides, but there's helpful tips and tricks. There's lots of really how-to videos. I mostly taught myself how to use it, but also I spoke to a real live person on the end of the phone, and they talked me through the initial setup, because we were transferring our setup from a previous similar payroll service. So that was really helpful to be able to do that. It also, as I mentioned, records all the leave, so the annual leave and the sick leave, etc., all automatically gets recorded in there. You can also then, it'll be automatic if you wanted to produce someone's final pay. So I find that really helpful as well. So thanks, we can take the slides off. So I'm happy to ask any questions about how I use it. I'm not sure if Alec has come on yet. Okay. So I'm happy to take any questions. I would say either use Thank You Payroll or use another automated payroll system. If you're doing manual payroll, that's way too slow and wieldy. I know some charities have got accounts people who might have been, there for quite some time and are still manually processing things. I really encourage you to get onto automated processing. It's so much faster and easier. I mean, something that takes me 5 minutes as a CE is a massive benefit. And something that's, giving back. It's a New Zealand social enterprise, so I particularly love that as well, that everything is hosted here. So Nikki said, I may have said it and missed it, but can you set pays in advance? Yes, you can. So for example, over the Christmas holidays, you could set up as many pays as you want. For example, depending on how long your office is closed, you can set up 2 pays or 3 pays over a period. Or for example, if you're going on leave, you can preset that up as well, which I find really helpful. How hard did I find migrating the system? I mostly found it okay, because it wasn't that different than the previous one, but I did need a little bit of help, particularly because we migrated across within a financial year. So we needed to transfer across how much we'd previously paid and what the leave balances were so that they were consistent. But actually talking to a real live person really just helped me do that, and it didn't take very long. I think probably max 10 minutes to talk to somebody to help me through it.
Kia ora, Rochelle. Are there any other questions from the floor? No.
Yes, you can adjust things. So each of the staff members have a specific profile. Sorry if there's noise. got building going on at my house. So each individual employee has their own profile, and they have a number of different tabs across there, including leave or salary. You can also set up things like bonus payments or special additional payments or allowances. You can also set that up so that that's kind of in the back end, and then you can automatically add that to each pay, either as a one-off or an ongoing way. Okay, so Mike's saying you do employ people, but according to the IR, we're an employer because we commission contractors, freelancers in the arts. Subsequently, we pay the PAYE. It's based on a lump fee as opposed to a daily regular amount. Can Thankyou Payroll manage a lump amount for freelancers? Now, this is, if Alec was here, it would be a good question for him. The short answer is, are you effectively saying as a one-off payment, Mike? Is that what you're saying?
Feel free to unmute Mike. And
yeah, as a lump, you know, there's a fee, a commission. You do X amount of work and here's your fee.
Not that I know of. But you'd probably best to check with them directly. I think essentially it's not set up to be paid as contractors, so it's more set up to be regular employees. But if you are, for example, if you are fixed term employees and then being paid through payroll, I think that would work. But effectively, if they were invoicing, then no, I don't think it would work. If they were invoicing you as an organisation, I don't think that would work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Xero would come in as well, wouldn't it, in that case?
Yeah, then effectively they could invoice you through Xero. And then you could set them up as a supplier that you receive invoices and pay.
You're right. The bit that I like about Thankyou Payroll is the automated relationship with the IRD for the filing, because to do that manually for 20 people, it's a nightmare.
It's huge, yeah. I mean, that's what really sold it for me as well. I found that just incredibly useful, because it's just more complicated than to keep your money aside about, you know, then you've got to have kind of another account or be consistently like filing. Whereas the fact that it's just automatically comes out at the very beginning means that you don't have any of those challenges.
Okay.
So Alison's saying they use Thankyou Payroll using the automated payment option. However, my board would like to set up an authorizer and a second authorizer like your bank, who is a board member. I think the short answer is yes, you can. I mean, we don't have that because our pay is effectively pretty much identical, other than a few leave, you know, minor amendments. And also we have multiple signatories at the bank, so they can also see through our bank account how much gets debited out. Plus I report quite regularly to my board, so it's not that much of an issue. But I think you can, I'm pretty sure that you can set up, once you prepare it, you can then send it to a second authorizer. You'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure you can do that within Thankyou Payroll before it goes to the bank. Yeah, at the bank, like we have 2 signatories, but it just automatically goes through. But because it's a regular amount, it's not that much of an issue. But I could imagine if there was quite differing amounts happening at different times, then there would need another check level in there for someone else to approve it. And I would suggest you try to do that in Thankyou Payroll before it goes to the bank.
Thank you, Rochelle. Just as a person on the receiving end of it, I also have got the Thankyou Payroll app on my phone that people can download and see. As an employee, you can track your pay and your leave and all of that. So that's been quite useful as well. So if there are no further questions on Thankyou Payroll or Xero, I'd like to invite Marion to tell us a bit more about NZ Navigator Trust and the digital stuff we love platform, and perhaps some other tools too, Marion, that you're aware of that use that for finance and payroll, but also where we can find that information. Would you like me to share that document, Marion?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. And yeah, please introduce yourself.
Right, kia ora tātou, mihi mai tātou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko irarangi te whakapaparanga mai, ko te awa muti te whenua tupu, ko whangarei te kāinga, ko Marion Blake aho. I'm a refugee from Wellington, living in the tropical north, and I can suggest to everyone it's a fabulous thing to do. I spent 20 years in Wellington, working as a CEO of Platform Trust, and also sticking my nose into a whole lot of other things about community organisations, community development, and was originally involved in the original creation of Huia. So it's fabulous to see Huia taking this role in the community. It's just awesome, and so really happy to be participating in this. I'm with my colleague Barbara, who will wave, and Barbara is the person that does all the work, and I just talk. Easy Navigator Trust was established on a lot of years ago, about 2013, 14, 15, that kind of time. And the idea was to begin to support community organisations with all of the things that we had in common. We all got different activities, different work, but we have a lot of things in common. And so the idea was to be able to support these organisations with tools and things that would make their life easier. And so the NZ Navigator Trust is the root in the family, and from that we run several websites. One of which is our latest one, which is Digital Stuff We Love, and this has come about because of the proliferation of applications, software solutions, programs that are accessible to community organisations. And being able to run them on, on your web, on your tablet, on your smart TV, and now on your watch. So we, as we were involving ourselves in this space, it was really clear that there's a lot of very clever stuff out there, and we've already heard some examples of that today. And believe me, that is a tip of the iceberg of the sorts of tools that are around that community organisations can access. But also because we know what it's like running a community organisation, it's everybody is usually ideas rich and time poor, and you're often trying to negotiate a whole lot of other things. So sitting around to find the right tools for you is something that doesn't always happen. The other thing is the technology is kind of constantly changing, and when I look around off boards of community organisations, there tends to be more grey hair than sort of other colours. So I think there is sometimes a reluctance by boards and trusts and groups to begin to enter into this world. So what we decided to do was that we saw some of these very cool things. So we set up Digital Stuff We Love as a resource for communities to go to. So the reason why we set it up different from the Community Net, which is also one of our websites, was because we want always to have free resources, and all the resources on Community Net are free. Whereas in digital stuff, sometimes there is a small cost, as you've heard already with Xero. Often there's a reduced cost, but there's still a cost. So what we wanted to do is we also wanted to have an interactive place so people could rate them. So we would say, well, we think this is great. And we might have people say, well, actually, I've tried it and it's rubbish. So actually having that conversation with community organisations. And the other alternative is people say, oh my gosh, have you seen this? I can actually do my mileage and I don't have to sit down for 2 hours doing it. So thinking about what we've done is tried to think about what are the game-changing tools that we can use. And to do that, Barb, who is sitting there not saying anything, has collated it for people and curates this site. So it's not just like anything else. If you Google it, you will be inundated with a load of stuff about apps for bankroll, for instance. So, but instead, what we've done is we've grouped them into categories. So there's tools there grouped around planning and collaboration. There's tools around finance and payroll, which is what we're talking about today. There's tools that are grouped around communication, marketing, design, administration, security. So we've actually grouped them, and so you can go and searching and looking for, I need something around this. The other thing is we've also looked at whether they're free with limits, like the first little bit's free, and then you have to pay for a little bit more or a little add-on. Whether there's discounted rates for NGOs, whether or not they are appropriate to the New Zealand environment and our legal jurisdiction. And the other thing is we've Barb's also done is curated this, so that's thinking about what are the benefits for you. So the benefits might be that it actually saves you time. It might be that it will actually help you with your record keeping. It might be that it actually helps you with your transparency, or it's just easy to use, or it could add impact, or it's a collaborative tool you can use with somebody else. So really thinking about honing in on what the benefits for the organisation might be, and also what sort of organisation this will adjust, because as we all know, the community sector ranges from tiny, involved in some very teeny organisations, you know, there's 4 of us. And then other ones where you've got a large entity that has significant staff and is a multi-million-dollar businesses. So it's kind of like thinking about, we've also adjusted it. So which sort of organisation is this designed for? Is it small team? Is it a larger organisation? Is it just everybody? And the other thing I think that we've also done is, how hard is it? I mean, really interesting, the questions that we've asked today. It's kind of like, so how hard is it? Because one of the things is we are all at really totally different levels of capacity and interest around the use of digital tools. So what we've done is, digital stuff has only been going for a little while now, but we've got a lot of resources on it already. We're really looking for other resources. So if you're coming across, or you know people that are coming across cool tools, just yell, because we're really keen to put them up there. We want to grow this community to have feedback, so that, you know, if you're using a tool and you think it is useful for others, say so, and then we can widen that network for you. So I guess that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build the digital community for community organisations, because I think we've already alluded to it today. This world is going to get more and more complicated. Governance is getting more and more complicated, or more accountable, perhaps. Community citizens are wanting more accountability from us, particularly if we're using government funding or public funding. So I think the more we can be digitally savvy, the more useful we're going to be to our NGOs. So that's our role. That's what we want to keep doing. And we're really interested in just anything else that comes along. Barb, have you got anything you wanted to add to that? That was nice. Okay, well, is there any questions or anything you wanted to kind of, I can help you with, or you can help us with?
Yeah, any questions from the room? Yeah, Mike.
I'll just say it rather than type it. To your point, Marion, recently, a week or two ago, I was involved with a workshop. I might have been through Huie, but it was about the Charities Amendment Bill that's being discussed at the moment. And my background is IT. And one thing my background is IT, and over the last few years, I've started up a charity. And what I've become sort of quite alarmed at is the amount of information about me that is being publicly exposed by the government through companies register, charities register, financial reports. And I've got no issue with that being exposed to New Zealanders, but because it's publicly exposed on government websites, it's my personal information is going out to the world. And so I'm so to your point, Marion, about where the future's going in terms of technology, I'm quite I'm thinking about putting a submission into that amendment bill, if there's still time, around privacy, because I think it's very unfair and unreasonable that all of us who are working in this sector are opening ourselves up to having our personal information exposed all over the world, especially in the current times of data crime, crypto crime, or whatever it's called. So yeah, something to be aware of anyway.
I think that's such a good point, Mike. And as an industry and as a sector, we haven't necessarily been on the front foot in this space. We tend to be reactive to things. So if you think about the thousands of organisations that are community organisations in New Zealand, we don't have a voice in that discourse. So even the process that we're going through now through the select committee, we're having to do sort of submissions, and there's we've got some excellent leaders in our sector who are driving this agenda for us, and I think that's really great. But I don't think we don't have a collective view about things, and I think we need to, particularly as the sort of work that we do supports often incredibly vulnerable people. So I just think perhaps that's an area of development that we should, as a sector, begin to collaborate around.
Kia ora, Marion. Thank you so much for your kōrero. So if there are no other pātai, and thanks, Nikki, you just posted in the comment that the submission deadline's been extended to the Charities Amendment Bill until the 9th of, I think, is it December? Yes, I think so. So that brings us to the end of our kōrero today on finance and payroll. I think a couple of things that I took away from today is if you can automate processes within your organization, give it a go, because whatever saves you time allows you time spent on other more important mahi. But also when you use technology, know your purpose, know what you want to use it for, because it also has limitations. And I really love the kōrero that Marion just had around different capacity. We all have at different ends of our own capacity and our willingness to adapt or take on something new. So have those conversations with people in your organizations too around what's most useful, and bring them on board if it's a new tool that you want to introduce. We did have one more question to Marion. Would you rather have one tool to rule them all, or lots of small specific tools, and why? Marion, do you want to jump back in and answer that question, or otherwise?
I think we have to go with the many, because it reflects the diversity of the sector and the utility of the sector. Yeah. Some people are sitting around kitchen tables and some people are sitting around board tables. And I think, depending upon the size and scale of organisations, the tools will emerge.
Yeah, and they're different tools for different purposes and to different audiences as well. But luckily, a lot of them are starting to integrate as well, which is really useful. So we've seen that with Thankyou Payroll, Xero, and so on. So on that note, I just want to share my screen one more time with you all. You bear with me a second. So I invite you to have a look at our upcoming sessions over the next 4 weeks. So we've got one on marketing and communication tools on the 27th of October, online meetings and events on the 10th of November, and team tools on the 17th of November. So please jump on onto those and find out more about the different tools that are available for those kaupapa. And Marion and Barbara hopefully be able to join us for those conversations as well. An invitation to you all to explore the digital stuff we love, and provide feedback, share tools that you're using with them, and so they can increase their reach and their suite of tools available on their website as well for everybody to use. And then also an invitation to join our Hui Whānau. It's free, it's on our website. You can do that, and that way you can find out about us and be up to date with all the upcoming mahi that we're doing. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to Saka to wrap us up. Oh, and one last thing, we do invite you to have to spend a couple of minutes just providing some feedback on this hui, and we'll post a feedback. We'll post a survey in the chat, and we'll close at 1 o'clock, but we invite you to stick around for a little bit longer for an informal kōrero if you'd like to. Over to you, Saka.
Just unmute. Thank you, Ronya, and thank you to all the speakers. It's just great to hear about all of this. Some tools that I might never use, but you never know. I'll be sharing with you the survey for this webinar, and I'll also be sharing it later once we close, but this is just so that you can have it in the chat. So to close, we'll have karakia whakamutanga. Ka whakairea te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, hui e taikire.